I see you.
I see you too. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon as well. Is the chat movable? That's interesting. That's a new feature I need to get into a little bit because it's interesting because that is actually what I wanted to have. It wasn't there yesterday, so
It definitely got an upgrade. Let me play with it real quick. Compact. Rounded. Ooh, okay. Like for my age, that font size.
I actually don't see the changes, Yuma.
Like I prefer the rounded one.
You need to prepare for a lot of comments today, so need a small one.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is interesting. I don't see the changes you make live on the admin view, but on the output.
Fair enough.
Continuous delivery today.
Yeah. Agentic continuous delivery. So I've been losing my mind on teams that use Cloud Code skills a lot for quality gates. Because we're now back to the 90s, the early 2000s, where we have this issue of we have a linter, did you run the linter? And the solution it was usually to put the freaking linter into a pre-commit hook, the pipeline, the IDE, the editor. And now we have this problem where those engineers that are using Agentic, that are using a lot of like a tight feedback loop with Cloud, where it's checking itself. Like we would want to have that functionality in the pipeline as well, in the Cloud running integration pipeline. But those teams usually do not have any machine learning operations. So there's no ML ops on like that level where we would have Cloud Code in the pipeline sort of judging the data analysis, or like we usually use external tools for that, like CodeScene or CodeRabbit or Kodana, but they serve a particular purpose. So it's really interesting, right? Because it's the amount of times this week, these past 2 weeks, that I had the conversation of, hey, could you review that? And the answer was, I made a Cloud skill for that. Could you run it? And I want to see the output, right? Like I want to see the output of the Cloud skill on their machine for what they're working on in order to help them. And it is completely private to them. Like it's a private conversation. And I'm seeing more and more the need to surface that in some kind of pipeline. Yeah, it's a mystery. Like I did not solve that problem yet. I also don't know how to advise the team to solve that problem. It seems like we just have to figure it out, which is fancy. Like it's new. Like it's
what is your current method to so if you see this issue, what comes to your mind is a fix for that issue? Or maybe going back to the issue, try to explain a little bit more the issue in a day-to-day thing which most common developers understand.
Okay. Well, let's start at the beginning, right? Let's say you use Cloud Code. The way you would use Cloud Code is you have your IDE open, and then you start a Cloud session. Oh, that's worse now because I can't see her. Okay. So the way you would use Cloud Code in an agentic way is you would have Cloud Code. You would start a Cloud session in your IDE or adjacent to your IDE. You have something checked out. You start having a conversation, and you're front-loading Claude with some kind of pipeline, right? So you either have strict hooks on how you're planning, or you are creating a strict workflow in the planning mode. But ultimately, you're telling it something along the lines of, hey, let's plan something and ask me questions, and then let's implement it. And for every step of implementation, let's run the tests, and let's do this, and let's do that, and let's do that, and let's give me feedback if it doesn't pass. If it does pass, let's refactor. For refactoring, use these skills. In this skills, absolutely do not touch the test. In that skill, absolutely do not touch that one. And then some of these are skills, some of these are pre-prompts. and you create a pipeline so that then you can have a conversation and it can run stuff in the background for you. So you're sort of run rather than having, you know how you would used to have vtest or something similar in watch mode, where you would code and then the test would pick up that and then just rerun the tests when it figured out that you've changed something. Sort of like that, but the workflow isn't vtest in watch mode, but the workflow is Claude, and Claude is doing all of the, like, you are programming through Claude. You might be typing manually, but generally only as an intervention because you weren't happy with the output. So Claude is your sort of watcher of your file, and it's sort of enforcing some kind of pipeline locally. It is running the tests, but there is another runner on top of the tests.
What is exactly missing? So we have an agent which is actually coding, and you're sitting in front of an agent. What is missing?
The agent is so powerful because it can run fuzzy guards, right? So it can run tests, but it can also run prompted tests. So it can run hard tests, right? So it can run a skill that says run PyTest in this folder. Mm-hmm. Right? So the output of the test, the outcome is the exit code of that command. But it also has a skill that says, I saw Andrea Lafoggia's post on this, it's like, hey, analyze the quality of the tests based on this Dave Farley's explanation of good high quality tests. We will call that a Farley index, and then give me a result as a true or false, or give me a score between 1 and 10 and reject the change if it's below 8 with suggestions, right? So you can run fuzzy checks which are written in Claude language. So it's not PyTest, it's not deterministic bash command, but it is a sort of either a separate agent or the same environment running a skill and giving you some kind of output. I'm finding myself more and more in the situation where that is super powerful locally on a developer's machine. But then when you start pairing and when you start, rolling it out to production, we sometimes want to have that kind of power just in the browser on the cloud CI pipeline. And there it becomes a lot harder because you don't have the cloud.
Two questions. Why is it so important for you to have it there? Because AI isn't really something I put on the same level with CI/CD right now, so the pipeline aspect. And the second one is, when would you run these kind of... I understand that you want to have that as a watcher.
Not as a watcher, but I would like those fuzzy guards to run on the pipeline as well.
But when? So before push, before you commit to change?
Yeah, on push. Yeah.
So you have multiple commits, you push them. That's the moment, or on commit?
As a verification, let's say. Because I can run it locally, but I have no guarantee that the developer did run it locally. So I would also rerun
guarantee in a team where you committed.
If we have an agent, right? Mm-hmm. If we're saying we are using an agentic workflow, I now rely on everybody being a good Samaritan about keeping their Claude up to date, using the correct Claude model, using the correct Claude version, and running it locally before they commit. So it is that linter issue again of, I rely on you to run it locally, but if you don't run it locally, we will run it in the pipeline, which is why we have a pipeline. And this is now such a thing where as I said, I'm not sure this is the right solution, but my gut instinct is it should run in the pipeline. It's like when I have a linter, and it's like, okay, the linter should also run in the pipeline, just in case that somebody is unable to or forgot or...
So solutions for that exist. You just want to have Claude as an agent somewhere in the pipeline.
Yes.
You could virtualize it and let it run as a worker node. You can use Mold to run
code and that's my dilemma. And that's my dilemma, right? That's my dilemma. Because it could be running on the pipeline in some kind of secondary node but I'm curious because there's no human involved. So from Claude's perspective, who is it talking to? Right? Like what conversation is it expecting? Like, does it know that there's no human in the pipeline and that it cannot ask questions? That's what I'm, like it's a different environment. So that was my dilemma this week. I don't know if this is interesting to you or the audience, but
but it's not really a dilemma, isn't it? So a dilemma is when you can't make a decision. You have A, B, and both bad. You need to make a decision. That's a dilemma.
Yeah.
But it is more like you feel uncomfortable, isn't it? So you miss. Is it a form of lack of confidence?
I am worried that it introduces a flaky guard into the pipeline. But I've seen evidence of it being useful. So it's sort of that
in the pipeline or as a linter.
In the pipeline, yes, in the pipeline, in the cloud pipeline. So I'm, like LLMs are deterministic for the most part. Like if I ask it to, here's rules, here's code, grade it based on these rules, the answer won't be peanut butter jelly. It will follow the prompt. But what I'm trying to figure out is there a better way, specifically in the pipeline? Like we found a good way to reason about it individually per developer with a human operator on a local machine, on a dev machine.
Mm-hmm.
How do we now operationalize it into an environment where we're used to having perfect determinism, right? Where we would say a flaky test is something we don't want, right? A flaky end-to-end is something we don't want. A uncontrollable source of non-determinism is something we don't want. And then I'm like, okay, let's put LLM, let's put Claude in that environment. So so it's kind of like a feeling of discomfort of, would I want that? Like, is it sensible? Is it breaking some fundamental assumptions about what I think should be in a continuous delivery pipeline?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the answer to that. Like, this is the first time where I'm sort of leaning on this edge of, let's have fuzzy stuff in the pipeline. Because it's so valuable. Just because it's so valuable, right? So, yeah.
So why must it be code to do that?
Oh, that's just what we're using. Like
there are other AI solutions doing that already, like CodeRabbit and these kind of things. They're doing exactly that. Just not
it has to be cloud, because most of our MCP setup and skills and contexts are extremely model focused. It's not like what we have set up wouldn't work on Codex. It could with some changes, but it is using a lot of Claude features, and I think that's good. I think that's a good thing. But then I'm thinking about it and thinking, okay, if we're using Azure DevOps, should we then, convert those gates over to something that Copilot understands? Like that's where my dilemma is. Like, should it be, should it be sort of cloud agnostic in a sense, like model agnostic, or should we all, because every team that I'm in a few teams now, and all of them are now in some sense rolling out this sort of organization-wide, please use agentic tools for something. We see widespread usage. We see widespread benefits. Like, we're doing MCP analysis of, hey, I'm debugging something, pull the logs, build a Grafana dashboard for me ad hoc. I'm looking at the browser, refreshing it. Hey, what does this mean? Ad hoc documentation. We've now made it so easy to interface with this and give everybody sort of enterprise cloud access that we're like, okay, let's all use Claude. Let's build company private skills that we share with each other in the company marketplace. And then I have skills for, what does this mean? How do I debug that? What is this behavior pattern for one kind of customer problem? Where do I find solutions for that? Who do I contact for that? What are the team structures? Who do I talk to for this kind of issue? We have Claude skills for that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, not Claude skills. Not all of these things are skills. I'm just calling them skills because it's in it's a plugin of some kind or it's a prompt of some kind, right? So it just feeds data of, okay, somebody in customer success, okay, who do I talk to when there's an issue like this? And we put it into Claude and we said, okay, well, ask Claude, because we gave it some pointers on helping you triage certain issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm thinking, okay, now we're so vendor locked in, is the last thing Anthropic doesn't have is a ML Ops CI/CD cloud, right? Like all the other vendors have it. Microsoft has it for OpenAI, for Codex, for GitHub, for Azure DevOps, and the other models have it in their own local ecosystems. And Claude is the only sort of customer-facing, end-user-facing agentic tool that is super good to use, because it's focusing on the tooling side of asking questions, interacting with your terminal, having internal loops that you can use, which is amazing for like TDD style sort of, ask me questions and then let's run the checks, and if checks are not good, use the feedback to immediately improve, stop when you start running it. Amazing. And I'm looking at Sam Hatham's work on Auto, and looking at Andrea's work and Brian Finster's work. I see a lot of value in it. It's a bit complicated to set up. It's a bit, there is some learning curve, definitely. But once you have it set up, I'm like, okay, cool. But now we're all using the one tool that doesn't have cloud operations. So should we now build our own, or should we swap the codex?
I think that that's a Maslow's problem.
What?
So I think that Claude Code is here treated as the nail in Maslow's hammer metaphor.
Oh, Maslow's hammer. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm pretty sure about this even, because first of all, Claude Code is built to be an agent in your or next to your IDE. It is what it is.
Next to your IDE, exactly. And that's my discomfort. Right.
That is what it's there for. So it's for the task to build something, to stay in the development loop.
Yes.
I think that because we never had such a powerful IDE like we have today, and that's fact. We had things like the linter, we had things like manual checks, and then the pipeline, which is a form of a quality gate, and these kind of things. You were supposed to do all these kind of things locally, but no, we knew developers were human, so we wanted to see proof before it's getting online. And the more severe the outcome would be of your code, like in medical aspects, financial spaces, the more necessary it actually is because of certification.
To guarantee it, or at least to log that it did run, and to log the output of the run, and to categorize it.
But now, majority of software development isn't that severe, so you can be a little bit faster. Now Cloud Code, for example, speeds up development, it speeds up the cycle, speeds up reviews, speeds up testing, speeds up everything locally, but it doesn't have any effect on the pipeline.
Agreed.
And I think that because it's simply not existing there. So what we do is actually telling Cloud Code that we have a regular pipeline. So I call it regular. It's an old school version of a pipeline. There the tests are running. We have a quality gate there. That's the typical thing we had 2 years ago before Cloud Code. And Cloud Code does understand it, and we have shared context. We have these kind of things shared between team members, and everyone knows quality gate. Yeah, like a linter. It's not a linter, so no linter is running. But no Husky is running to ensure that it's running. But it is working, so it is not like we missed something because. Yeah, but I'm really taking care of the maturity aspect, so that everyone is actually doing the idea of I bring that online right now, so which means that I need to take care of everything. But we are not a representative team, like a team. We are not that large, It's just like a little bit of freelancing stuff, internal thing. So it is. You have a good overwatch of everything, right? While larger teams, and I know that from mentorings or coachings, they struggle more with that idea, right? They have more isolation between the teams, these kind of things that they don't really communicate. And it is oftentimes that they, some of them don't even use any form of AI. Some use still ChatGPT to generate functions, and others are going agentic. That's a weird mix, right?
And I saw like the huge discrepancy of some teams are just super old cats, old dogs, and they're like, years behind adoption. And there's teams that are sort of super far ahead, customer success is vibe coding ideas of what could be the problem. They have an MCP set up for the Grafana dashboard, and they're sort of forward deploying a Grafana dashboard for the developer of, hey, this was the issue. You can see it in the dashboard. Cloud Code thinks that the bug is related to this line. Could you look into it? Because that's where my knowledge stops. And that's super useful. You know what I'm thinking when you were describing it as it's the sort of the new linter, it's the sort of this runtime. You put it very well when you said Cloud Code is this sort of interface between you and an IDE. I agree with that, and that's where my discomfort comes from. I now found myself just wanting to use some of the Cloud Code prompts or skills as a binary. It's like rather than writing a script and running the script, and the script returns true or false for the quality gate, I would like to describe the script as a Cloud prompt, and then just not be in the IDE, just run that skill as a binary against a file or against a change set. You know what I mean?
I mean, you could build yourself something like that in a way or
yes,
another.
But now I'm thinking, should I be building that? Like, is that like how cooked are we?
I don't see any value in that right now, because for many companies I especially working with, getting things done is the actual bottleneck. It always was for those companies. So I know you have a different experience there. I don't, right? So especially in Germany, there's a different mindset of how software, especially the entire infrastructure, the entire topology of teams and companies actually work. And it is that's one of the reasons I think, because Stefan Schmidt, for example, is always talking about that the bottleneck is gone. He has the same focus. So I see the same things here, and that was the big thing. So now people can focus on working together properly, and using the pipeline as it was supposed to be, not necessarily to say I just committed. So it is like doing the things twice. If you do it locally on your machine, right, you have no need to do it again somewhere else. If the double check mentality is for most companies, let's say especially SMBs, not necessary. It is absolutely not necessary. If you do that, okay, great, but then you have a lot of money, you have a lot of runway probably, and many companies don't have that. They need to get things done, and then it doesn't make sense, because it is a little bit like the Pareto principle. It is the 20% is a little bit like the second run is in the 20% area. It doesn't really. It's 80% effort for the very same result you had already on your machine, right? And if you have a good environment, if you have an environment which is realistic on your machine, right? Yeah. So we still prefer to Dockerize everything, because Dockerized local environment, Dockerized production environment, and since then we never had issues again with the differences between production and non-production environments. And that these kind of things are, in my opinion, today even more valuable and important than in the past. In the past, we had a lot of things like it's tested in the pipeline anyway, it's built, it's deployed, it's automatically end-to-end tested and then deployed to production, those very complicated pipelines. And everyone could just push and push and push and just throw it into the pipeline and gets. But I never liked this approach too much. For me, it was more like a fail-safe, but not the actual quality. The quality gate should always be the developer itself, which that trains the maturity level. That creates the ownership. So if I have the feeling that in my IDE, I press merge to production, whatever that is called, right? I do that in that moment. I'm confident that this will pass through. And pipeline is only a vehicle to actually bring that to production. And of course, when it has the standard basic things, just get them through. Maybe you have overseen something, maybe there's some flakiness in there you haven't seen, or something like that. But it is not meant that the entire process you do with your IDE is totally replicated again in the pipeline, even though we need to ask ourselves, is that worth money-wise? Because already right now, the biggest concern right now in all WhatsApp groups of CTOs I am in is money. It's the budget for Cloud Code. Most people nowadays use Cloud Code, and most people nowadays don't really know how to pay that. It's already an issue there. So telling them to run all the reviews 2 times is the thing they say, no, I don't want to have that. I'm pretty sure about that one. Because already we're talking most companies with 10 developers have at least a 5-figure sum Anthropic bill. That's currently
absolutely.
That's absolutely normal. Even as a solo dev is around 500 to 1K if you use it in an agentic way in a full-time employee job. That's the cost of Cloud Code.
Depends. Power user, definitely. Yeah.
So I see that often that developers try to save money. They use those typical $20 Juni, $20, a little bit of ChatGPT here and there, or built-in AIs. And then they try to do the things, and they are very unhappy. They waste literally their time and their mental capacity to fix things and try to get it running. But in reality, it's not really working. So if you really want to go with AI, in my opinion, in an agentic way, you have no other solution than Cloud Code right now, because all other solutions, maybe I haven't tried Codex that much. Maybe it is.
That's the thing, like we had the same issue. We had the same issue, Adrian, with the cloud pipelines a few years ago. No, I mean more than a few years ago, and the AWS started off the same way, right? AWS said, "Oh, you can have EC2 and you can run anything you want," and then before you know it, you need a custom load balancer, and that custom load balancer needs a custom stack, and that custom stack needs a very specialized Docker image, and then at a certain point, only certain kinds of hardened Docker images from certain kinds of Docker artifact repositories can be deployed to that stack. And then you want to use some cloud functions, and then those cloud functions only work in AWS. And I see us stepping into the same minefield with cloud. It's like amazing. It's amazing right now. It's the best tool with the best model. But it feels like a very invasive vendor lock-in. It has a high bill.
But what's the alternative? So it's
that's my dilemma.
If I don't have an alternative, but there is a tool, and it definitely brings me a benefit, and the return of invest is reachable, visible, and existing, then I don't have a reason to not use their tool. So, for example, I'm
not saying there aren't alternatives. There are alternatives. You can buy a fleet of Mac minis and run something on Olama locally. Done. Right? There are alternatives.
Yeah, okay. So
all of the alternatives come with, it's like that Mac versus Linux versus PC debate. The Mac is the only one where I feel respected as an end user when it comes to user experience. And everything else is very much build it yourself and debug and compile and like fix it yourself every now and then.
I say that if you
cloud is the only system where I don't have to actively do that.
Yeah, so if you distract every of your developers 10 to 20% a day, it is definitely more expensive than running Cloud Code in a cloud version.
Agreed.
In an API code. So that's how we use it. It costs money. So, getting hardware, letting run, you need to have someone doing that. That is a new technology. It's a new kind. It's not standard infrastructure. It is not just get an ops guy and set up a Kubernetes cluster. It's not like that.
It's not like that.
You don't know if it's like that in 1 year from now.
Is only primarily coming from this idea that I and most of my teams that I work with, we aren't really experienced with running ML ops in the cloud.
Most people are not. Even the people like follow people on Substack who are ML people, and they say
I'm hesitant to make ML ops capability a hard requirement to develop in this pipeline. And
yeah, I wouldn't like to say ML is now a part of the DevOps culture idea, and we need to have that person in order to run, and the developer
right,
is now
right,
ML responsible. Doesn't make
yeah,
sense. I
yeah, it
want
doesn't
to
make sense.
have a agent which is running. That's it, right? So if I can live with the privacy contract I get from Anthropic, then everything is fine for me because I have costs anyway, and I say it like this: most companies we work with who always try to do everything themselves, they were the most blocked companies of all.
Agreed.
It is most
Agreed.
often the CTO in the small companies
Yeah.
who's sitting there like, I want to do it myself because
Yeah,
I
building
really
little
like it. It
gadgets,
is so
building
great.
little gadgets and
It
little.
is, you know,
Yeah.
they mix it with their hobbies,
Yeah.
right? Because it's fancy, it's shiny objecting. The problem is AI is continuously evolving. It's not like, Kubernetes, for example. Yeah, it was
Mhm.
a thing in the last 10 years to get Kubernetes out. You even get R&D from the German state if you have used Kubernetes instead of your old service. You just get that. It's a risky thing. People didn't know it. Today it's not risky anymore. Everyone understands it. You get PaaS solutions everywhere. It is
But
not a
still,
big deal
I would
anymore.
prefer a PaaS solution than have a constant engineer wording about it.
You don't actually need that because there are PaaS solutions like Mugenius, like
But that's my
DigitalOcean.
point. I would rather. I grew
It
up in
is
the
solved.
era.
The problem is solved. But
I grew
AI
up in
isn't
the
solved.
era where Docker Swarm, and Docker images was not a solved problem, and every developer had to freaking learn it like overnight. We even started with Vagrant before we had Docker, and then VMware local images, and sometimes we wanted the images to be compatible between Vagrant and VMware because one of them ran on Linux and the other ones didn't run on a Mac, and then we had this interoperability problem. And then eventually everybody started using Docker. But that transition point of everybody uses Docker and the Docker file is now the standard in the ecosystem, that felt like very strict vendor lock-in. And then AWS jumped the ship. Then we got Kubernetes from
Yeah.
Google. Then we got Helm or Argo, whatever you prefer. And that felt like, our whole pipeline is in the control of one or two large companies. And that looked weird. It looked weird that such a powerful tool, because I remember how powerful it was to have Docker images, because it was super annoying to configure every machine exactly how you needed it manually. It
Mhm.
was so freaking annoying. And we had Puppeteer and we had enterprise tools to solve that problem, but nothing that would be meaningfully reasonable and appropriate for a developer laptop. Right? And now we have that same thing with Claude on a developer laptop. And I'm thinking about it from this perspective of I definitely don't want to invest into maintaining gadgets, into maintaining some kind of um, um, maintaining some kind of gadget, some kind of little pet project for here's how we run Cloud in our own special way. That's that's a distraction.
Mhm.
But I saw how powerful and how I don't know revolutionary things like CloudBot were, whatever it's called now. I don't know what is it. Multiple. I don't know. It got renamed a few times.
The
Um,
clause, right? The clause.
I don't know what it's called right now. But you know what I mean, right? That's personal assistant kind of thing. And the most powerful thing, the most powerful I saw in that app. I'm not even sure if it's an app, but like in that kind of tool was the ability to run certain prompts periodically, right? Where I can create a workflow with an LLM and say run this at 3 p.m. today. And it'll figure something out, it'll go look at something, and if it's not okay, it'll send an email. And that is ridiculously powerful. All right, so check at 5 p.m. If this meeting didn't happen, ping somebody. If check, wait for that meeting to conclude, then do this and this and this and that, and call that thing. Very powerful. And I saw that being used. I see that by the most sort of avant-garde and interested and sort of visionary engineers who are like super ahead of the curve on AI adoption for software engineering, I see them get closer to that, and I'm getting worried about, okay, when do they start developing their own little CloudBot gadget, right? and I'm seeing it sort of pulled together, and I'm, in a way, I'm feeling that I should intervene. Of, okay, that's clearly not going to be useful for our company right now. But also, I'm very curious about, that's actually really useful if you can figure out how to operationalize that into the pipeline. Because I wouldn't mind a full cloud audit about changes that went through today to the pipeline nightly, right? So Cloud Code checks all the PRs that went through today, all the commits that went through today, and just reruns its quality gates so it's already running on developer machines. Like, that would be very powerful.
So
and then
back to Windows server pipelines where you can let Claw run, right? Isn't it?
I mean, kind of, right? I mean,
that's suddenly Windows servers are great again, isn't it?
man. Yeah. So that's what I've been thinking about. Is that makes perfect sense to me. I see it coming, and this is the first time that I am actually excited about it. That it's not just some science fiction. The technology and the developer experience, the user experience, and the product research, let's say, CloudBot being a good example, has been done, and it's super useful. And we just, it's just, hey, cron jobs for AI. It's like, of course, that's the obvious thing that we need, right? Of course, that's the thing that we need. Because I don't want to. What bothers me the most about agentic AI usage is that I have to sit at the freaking computer. Is that I have to be there, and it has to be my IDE, and it has to be my work tree, and it has to be my GitHub checkout, and it has to be my key, and it has to be my access to things, and I need to look at it. And that's okay when it's assisting my current workflow, but I would also like to offload, some of that like tooling pipeline. It doesn't have to replace the pipeline, but if you can run alongside it and say, yeah, I'm looking at the pipeline, here's refactoring opportunities, right? If it could generate refactoring opportunities from everything that went out today and just give us a quick report, that would be amazing. Like, even just for coaching or for actually driving initiatives within the company, just exposing easy opportunities. Yeah. But again, tooling is not quite there, and automating the automation into a cloud pipeline that then comes back and talks to you via some Slack, or what was it, CloudBot used WhatsApp, right? You could configure it to like read your emails, and you could talk to it through Signal or WhatsApp. Like, to me, that's a bit too much. That's okay. That's a lot of attack surfaces for something to go wrong. But I'm already talking to my automation through the pipeline and through GitHub and through tickets and through MCPs. It would be great if you could just close the loop and talk back and say, because you know what I'm seeing in Teams right now is there's a Slack discussion, and then we have the Linear, the project management tool, MCP hooked up to Slack. And then you can do tag Linear, the bot, at Linear. Hey, Linear, can you create a ticket out of this conversation? You can ping it. But to me, the next revolutionary step would have been if it didn't require that ping. If it just went through and picked up important conversations and created documentation out of that. The same way, like, rather than me pinging it on my local machine, to just watch the commit history and just look for things, but not in a PR gate, like pull request gate kind of way, not in an invasive kind of way, but just as a suggestion. Invasive, but
the invasive.
Hey,
I think that every time when something like pipeline, workflows, development cycle come in, this term invasive, strict, these kind of things, I know why people developed that in the last 10 years. But that was always an issue because people weren't really like thinking about these kind of things like we both, for example, doing right now.
Mhm.
So it is a little bit like people go and say that I don't really care, I just want to code a little bit. And many use, when they use AI, don't even think about, I should maybe ask which AI this person is using. Maybe we should share something, right?
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
we should share context. Today was from Olaf Windhauser. He's talking about AI on LinkedIn. He had an interesting thing. I was discussing that a little bit, and there was an aspect I was writing about the context shared possession. Right? It is like many people still see that. Oh yeah, I have my sessions, right? So I can go back in time and have a session and retrieve that session and work on that session. But how is that actually done by your? So that's a huge gap right now. And is it actually necessary? Because if you do that, you will have a token problem if you stay in this. So you need to find ways to create and work with persistent context. And in my opinion, there is a very easy solution to that. Just version context. That's it. You just reference that. That's it. Right?
That's been also on my mind. It's like, should we version that? Like, should we keep some of it? Because, and also for cross operability, a lot of my business partners use Granola, for example, right? So it is just an audio monitoring tool. Like, the other person doesn't know you're recording, but it's monitoring a conversation on any device, on any software, and it gives you live feedback. So you can also ask it, hey, I zoned out for 5 minutes. Could you repeat back what they said that was important? And that's really valuable. Or, hey, we're about to wrap up the conversation. Can you give me anything I missed? And you can ask Granola locally, and it will help you.
I know that pain. When you had a conversation, I think, we have talked about something for an hour, and now I need to write down what we've talked about.
There's one more thing, but I forgot. Okay, right. So it's that, and sometimes I'm taking notes, and I really focus on making sure my notes are brief. But sometimes in taking notes, I just like disconnect for like 10 seconds and maybe miss something important, and that's really hard to balance. And I am using, of course, AI to take notes, but I also want my personal notes to really not miss important stuff. What I mean is that I had this conversation this week, and so I'm sharing this story because of what you said about versioning context. Because I had this conversation with an event organizer, and they were inviting me over to do some live coaching, or at least some kind of little seminar on project management and project engineering and AI usage. Basically, that's what we're talking about now.
Mm-hmm.
And at a certain point, we had to talk about setting up the webinar and who is it for and what is it for. And I could see that they're using AI tools for that. And then they asked me for my feedback. I was like, okay, would this description be okay? And I said, oh, you're using Gemini. I think it's hallucinating. Let me put it into my Claude, because I have a, presenting Dennis the coach or Dennis the speaker or my work. I have prompts that are contextualized. So I said, okay, let me take your stuff and put it into my Claude, and then I give you an idea, and then I give it back to you. Then you put it into your Gemini, and then we keep doing this back. And it was really efficient, but it felt extremely clumsy, and I can imagine expensive, right? So that seems to be like, okay, we're playing with this new technology, but there's already so many friction points, right? Where sometimes people invite me into their ChatGPT session, or they invite me into their Gemini project, and then I'm looking at that, and then I'm thinking, okay, what does it mean now? Does this mean that they own everything I ask in this conversation? Do I own it? Can I? Is this a document that we're not sharing? Am I suggesting? Am I writing? It's sort of Google Drive on steroids, but I'm not sure who's in charge, who's owning this, and does it know about my prompts? Look, like it really blurs the line. Like, okay, what can this thing access right now? And I see this as well in companies where you have this, everybody's using Claude, and then there's just one Codex user, and everybody on Claude is on the enterprise one, and then that one Codex person is on their personal client, and then they hook up their company MCP to their personal Codex, and it's hooked up to their personal Notion, and I look at that and I say, oh God, no. So another attack vector. It's like it's just this another level of concern of reminding people of, hey, please don't, MCP wise, only connect business stuff with other business stuff. Do not connect it to your personal stuff. And just these kinds of conversations, like, it feels very artificial, and we've moved into this space like within 6 months. Like last year, I did not have these kinds of conversations, and now it's everywhere. Okay, we have some.
I can't open Substack of yours somehow. It's the same bug like 2 weeks.
Oh, it's a bug. Substack is actually, we have a few people, but no questions so far.
Kalorian has something to say. We have a chat open. It's actually cool, this new chat, even though I called the audience dead audience. I mean dear audience, not that audience.
I noticed the paired channels on LinkedIn are working again, which is, knock on wood, something I'm grateful for.
I noticed that every second stream, and every other second stream I noticed that it's not working. So
yeah, it works unless it doesn't. So
the quality isn't great, so it's a little bit of an issue with the.
What's that host account? Who is that?
It's a me. So that's when you type here, actually.
So that's you on the studio account.
Yeah.
On the studio. Okay. Cool. Okay. And Adrian commenting is when you went to LinkedIn and commented from there.
Yeah, that's a
typical
HGHG thing. We have multiple chats.
Okay. Kaleon asking, lovely conversation. I don't ask, is it now good a time to discuss using agents and LLMs to analyze feature requirements, acceptance criteria, what the task is, all the non-deterministic work that LLMs are good at, something like pre-code pipeline? What do you think?
I need to read it because you were reading too fast. It is now to discuss using agents as language. I don't really understand the question in this. So I have two things in mind. Is it more like before a task?
Before, yeah, I think
before a task, yeah.
Like to enforce, like instead of that crazy Jira workflow where it's enforcing some kind of weird template and asking you a million different things.
So we could, since AI isn't replacing software developers, we could replace product people. That's good.
You haven't?
Yeah, I have. So I would replace myself. That's not so nice. I don't replace myself. I
like being upstream of agentic work. I don't think we need a loop on that level. Like I want to make sure that there is this point, Kaloyan, to answer your question. I don't have an answer. Let's start there. I don't have a very fleshed out answer, but I can share what I've been working with. So what we have been working with, for example, regarding project management, is I'm coaching a team, I'm coaching the project, the product owner, the engineers, and they have a stand-up, and I'm intervening, right? So I'm like, okay, is this really what we should be discussing? Or did we fall into the reporting trap of, just ritualistic Scrum file? And rather than just intervening and explaining the theory, I give them a prompt. And I tell them, look, here's a prompt. It describes your team. It describes my role. It describes your role. It describes our OKRs. Put the prompt into Claude and give them a screenshot of our Kanban board and tell me what it reports back to you. Because it will very likely give you the correct surface level analysis of there's a WIP problem, there's an upstream problem, there's a downstream problem. It'll immediately identify the bottleneck based on most of the lean and XP work that I've put into the prompt, and it'll give you valuable feedback. And if you can do that every day with yourself before coming to me and asking me a question, that will be very valuable, right? So I started using that because people ask me, okay, should we analyze feature requirements? Like, no.
Are you using that as a coach for the team, or how do you mean you use it?
that's how I coach them. Like, instead of us having a conversation, I first give them this sort of like quick homework of make a screenshot, take this prompt. I give them the prompt, right? Because I'm priming I'm priming the AI with the correct reference material. So I'm giving them the prompt and I tell them, look, make a screenshot, show them the whip, and Claude will tell you immediately what the issues are, and then we can discuss the issues. Rather than me having to surface level check, like, do you see the symptoms? Do you see the signals? Just, okay, let's imagine you can't tell because I need to teach you. Okay, but maybe you can teach yourself using my prompt. Right? So that's something I do live, just at, just off cheek. They want to talk to me and I'm like, okay, do this first. Do this first. It takes 5 minutes, and then show me what Claude gets. And maybe it gets something good, maybe it doesn't, but it is a very fun and exciting conversation. And I do the same thing with regards to feature requirements. People do this thing when there's like a huge conversation and they go with Claude into plan mode. And then Claude creates this plan, they create a ticket, and I'm like, okay, but that's not useful, right? What are we doing today? And then that's a human conversation. Like, there's this huge plan. Obviously, it has 9 phases. We're not doing everything today, and it's silly that we even have a ticket for that far into the future. Like, we don't want to do waterfall. It is impossible that Claude could somehow circumvent 60 years of software engineering experience and suddenly become a perfect waterfall planner. That's La La Land, right? So Claude obviously doesn't have a perception of the timeline. So when it starts creating a plan that has 9 phases, obviously we don't need all that.
Yeah, then let it estimate. It tells you like, okay, I need 3 weeks for this, and then in 10 minutes it's done. And I think, okay, look, how have you estimated 3 weeks of work? I had that several times, but it doesn't do the weeks. It was a half year ago, I think, when it always like try to tell me what the amount of work and story points are for this. That was totally weird.
And I don't find that. So maybe that answers Kaloyan's question. Please give us some feedback.
I would have something as well to that.
What I do use, Kaloyan, that is a little bit different, is when we had an original stack and we did deploy something today. What I do use, sort of more prompting help with MCPs, is, hey, Claude, take the original ticket and the acceptance criteria, look at the commits, and then split what was done today from what is still in to do, and split the ticket. So it automatically picks up context of here was our vague plan for this week. Look at what's actually manifested in the pipeline that went through the pipeline and split the ticket. Separate the work in progress from the done. Because that's annoying to do manually. And usually we try to avoid doing that manually by getting the split right at the beginning, and that's a huge waste of time because that's what planning poker is for. Planning poker is meant to identify those not ones, because those are large tickets, to split them into ones so that then you don't have to split them again while you're working, and we can just skip all of that and just have an AI do it. That I found very surprisingly useful. But it's such a niche bag of tricks that I'm experimenting with it, and I've got one other person to use it so far in the past few weeks, right? So it's not this like huge thing. It's just something delightful and useful that I picked up on.
We use the engineers for product, actually, ChatGPT Pro, the projects, and they are shared between the organization. And at the end of every conversation there, we tell the AI to memorize what we have said in the project, which it does. So it does it actually very well. And the result, the takeaway, is a pre-prompt for Claude. It does know that it is there to actually pre-prompt Claude. So ChatGPT does know all about the relation between the clients, the features, the roadmap, while Claude is only focused on understanding the current context of development. Because Claude Code probably could do something similar with versioning, but token windows are totally off. Yeah. And ChatGPT is very, at least on a financial level, much more interesting when it comes to these kind of large documents, ideas, roadmap, transcripts of conversations with clients. You can all put it in there and extract it and use that information to create the next tasks in the ideal tasking. So we do monotasking. It's like just one thing, do it, get it done, next
Kanban.
thing.
I mean, it's Kanban essentially, yeah.
Yeah. So not necessarily like having 20 tickets per developer in isolation. That is not what we do anymore for quite a long time already.
And it's also how I use LLMs of, it's like we're monotasking if I use a different name, right? So it's Kanban where you have a horizontal whip. Usually people have whips on the columns. And monotasking is when you also have a whip limit on the horizontal, right? So the team in aggregate cannot have more than this across all lanes. That's monotasking. But I find it, I used to call it monotasking, and then people were like, oh, but then 7 people work on one thing. And it's like, no, that's not what it means. It's like,
okay. I have the same. This is the reason why I call it. I had it in my stream yesterday. I called it mono mission. It is like you have one mission a day with multiple tasks. So people are focused on one thing, even though they don't need to work on the same thing at the same time, which is unrealistic in a team of 10. You don't.
What I did is I started doing more LLM analysis. It's like I feed linear projects and GitHub commits into a Claude, and then I ask Claude to identify a pattern of how the team works, so then I can create a dashboard that allows me to pick up early alerts. So for example, what I'm looking at is if the team creates a lot of empty tickets and by default gives them a high priority for everything that goes into the backlog, obviously we don't know what the real high priority tickets are. So I will create an alert for, hey, if somebody just created 5 backlog items and they're all high prio and they are meant to be solved sequentially, that's silly. I will create a board that triggers an alert in linear, right? So and it's very easy to just use old habits, feed them into Claude, and just get the main patterns out. And then I'm setting alerts, like linear board alerts for subscriptions and Slack notifications for, hey, I created an alert board. The board surfaces things that look weird, right? So one engineer having 3 high priority tickets in progress at the same time, that is something that my board picks up. And we don't want that. Like, we don't want that level of confusion in the board, because the board is meant to help us see and figure out where any kind of short-term bottlenecks. And if you're doing that accidentally because you're not bookkeeping correctly, because you accidentally set the default high prio thing and it's not high prio, then it'll yell at you, and then I'm sort of making that a little bit easier with like, it's not me yelling at them. It's like, hey, fix your tickets, but it's just linear, giving them an alert of, hey, what you just did created an alert, as if there's a real issue. If there isn't a real issue, you probably over prioritized something for next week, so you don't forget. But that's not how we want to use it. So stuff like that. Regarding Kanban, yeah, I like Kanban. Claude understands Kanban very well. You can get a lot of good actionable advice by just feeding it MCP and screenshots of your team's progress to it. However, there's this thing where if you ask Claude to understand all tickets, or, hey, go look into my code base and try to figure out my current priorities, or look into my last investor updates and roadmap changes for the last 12 months, it will go through a million tokens like that. And if you're on Opus on 4.6, that's an expensive gamble. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful as well. It's like what you're feeding it, and when you're feeding it something where it just has to sequentially read everything, it's probably gonna take way too long, be way too slow, and cost way too much. One of my students did a full JavaScript to TypeScript migration on a fairly fresh project, like less than a year old, non-trivially large, and they did it mostly with Claude. I helped them figure out how to do it manually. We did one step manually, we did one step with Claude, and then we said, well, okay, teach Claude what you just did. Like this whole idea of how are we creating the ticket, how are we measuring progress, how are we rolling it out to production so we can partially roll it out, like we don't have to do all or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Keep feeding it back and create a feedback loop, and they've been able to migrate the entire code base solo without any incident in a week, with Cloud Code, of course. And then they had to intervene 10% of the time, right? So I didn't coach them how to migrate. I know how to migrate, and then I told them just help them figure out what would we normally flag as risky kind of deployment strategies and de-risk them first on the human level, written it down, fed it back to Claude, and then Claude came up with a better plan. So we basically thought what kind of feedback, what are the risks that we don't want, how to detect the risks, how to surface the risks in like ticket or project management, or keeping commits a certain size so we don't do a too big migration that just breaks everything and we can't undo. And that was very productive. And then you just use that in context and you just keep moving forward. And that was very easy to solve, and like a very low amount of tokens as well.
I like to point out that Agentic, any agentic workflow, no matter the LLM, does solve a very interesting issue. So, and was the overestimation of the own skills of senior developers. So senior developers often think like, if I do it like step by step and these kind of things, then I'm confident I can deploy things. So it's a little bit like that you deploy things because you have looked at it, maybe someone else, but this person was in a rush, and you know how it is. Like the reviews are most often like
there's recency bias towards testing it manually yourself.
Exactly. And then you have a timely bias as well, because people are pushing you to get it online and these kind of things.
Managerial pressure.
Yeah. And AI is there are two aspects. AI does understand. Goodbye.
I'm still here. Like the studio.
I know, it's just, the studio is like the output quality on I can't really see it. It's like bad. Anyway, it's like this. So
I lost chat.
What the really? Oh, the chat is still there for me. So what okay, the AI is so fast in analyzing the problem. If you have enough context, what you are going to do here, what the issue was. Sometimes I even copy a message from Teams to Claude and say, this was your original message. That is, I think, the issue. Here's the context of the context we store as AI context for that area.
Yeah.
The plan, and in the end, you really ask the simple question. Review, have I overseen something? Is that issue maybe somewhere else as well?
Yeah.
Go from me and be critical about these things and give me a list of things we should take a look for. And that I do, and that really solves a lot of issues I wouldn't have seen myself, even though the tests are green. Yeah. You know, the tests are green because the tests are green doesn't mean I have seen everything, right? So it reduces significantly the possible mistakes you don't see right now. So the gaps in your confidence. And that gives additional real confidence, because you see much more, like a little bit like a pen test for your code. You just let it run. It's done in a minute at latest, right? And you get something which you would have used probably 15 minutes, or find someone who is genuinely taking a look and taking the time to look at the code. And even then, it's unlikely that you are as fast as an AI doing that. So I like this aspect very much.
Especially. Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. Good. I need to come to an end today.
Yeah, I've always been looking for two things in the pipeline, right? So, and by pipeline, we can also treat it like a project management pipeline, right? So it's great if these things can be merged. You know, this is something very, very much ingrained into the agentic automation community that you can see in Auto Engineer, Auto On, like Sam Hatton's work, and even the event modeling community, where we want to merge the work pipeline with the architecture stream with the project management pipeline. That's what event modeling is, right? Like we're describing what needs to be built, and the diagram that we're using to describe how to build it also serves as a project management pipeline. So we see the progress as it is being built. Because otherwise I need to, one system has the features and the other system has the progress, and the code doesn't understand the progress. Right? So if the pipeline for the code can say in the pipeline feature is 40% ready, that's super valuable. That's sort of the idea with BDD, and then having the full context in there, the acceptance driven tests in there, and you don't skip them. You basically just test for, once we're done with this leg, with this epic, it'll do these things, and then you put them in the pipeline to see the pipeline telling you how far along we are. And you can then use this for project management. And that is the easiest way to really agentify everything and just embrace a full agentic continuous delivery pipeline, because you only want two things. You want the greens to really matter, and you want all issues to show up as red in the pipeline. And you want the pipeline to show you the progress of work in progress features, right? So that you continuously merge everything, but it still has some kind of understanding of, okay, it's not quite ready yet, it's this ready, and when it's that ready, we will turn off the feature gate and we will roll it out to customers. So once you can do that and operationalize that, it's very powerful, especially in small teams where there's less overhead, there's most of the work is kind of similar. That's been something I've been really active in using MCPs and AI tools, because it's so powerful to not have to rely on Jira or reminding people to update their Jira tickets to figure out where we are, or have stand-ups where we can just do completely asynchronously and just have a pipeline that tells us where we are. That should be a gold standard, if possible, for a lot of small teams.
That's good. What were you drinking? That was blue.
The bottle's blue.
So what's with all the wine you were drinking in the first streams?
The coffee, you mean?
No, wine.
It's a bit late for coffee. Yeah, the first streams we had a little bit earlier, I think, and we started in summer. So I used to drink coffee on before OTJ with the old.
I think we started initially around. No, it was always maybe, but it was off.
We did like 3. We did shift the hours in the beginning, and then we started 4 p.m. for every day, and then we did a little bit. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Good. That was an interesting conversation. I think continuous delivery and agentic coding. It was mostly about AI today, to be honest, but looking forward for that one with Brian. So Brian already asked, we will find a date together with Brian, talking specifically about the topic, how we talk about that one, and looking forward for that one, even though we probably need to find a different date for that one. Or we will.
So Brian can't make...
Hi.
I don't know how this works. Okay, whatever. Oh, that button. Okay. So Brian can't make a Wednesday, right? Like that's the issue?
That is issue.
So we would have a OTJ special with Brian Finster to talk about agentic continuous delivery. Cool. Looking forward to it.
It's good.
Not next week.
Not next week.
Not next week. Okay, good. Also, I will be having a project management, product engineering session here in Ljubljana on March 4th, I believe. So I'll be gone on that stream.
In 2 weeks.
Yeah, so if we can do a off Wednesday stream in that week, that would be a good fit.
I managed something.
Okay.
We'll get back to you. It's, yeah. We have nothing. I think we have done everything for today. So let's let's wrap up. Thanks everyone, and see you next week then.
If you have any specific AI questions, please send them our way, especially for that Brian episode. Questions regarding AI in the pipeline, questions in AI in software engineering in general, project management. send them our way to our LinkedIn's, and we'll be happy to discuss them live with Brian, who's an expert on the topic.
Thanks.